So thank you everybody for coming tonight. My name is Don Morrill. I'm the Executive Director of the New York Technology Council. I'd like to start tonight by introducing Michael Lopez, who leads our finance and accounting event track to kick off the evening, and then I'll be back up for just a couple more words.
Do I have to bend down to, if I talk up here, you can still hear me because my voice usually, boom, I'm whistling in the back. All right. So I too would like to welcome everybody to, this is the first edition of what used to be, we used to call it the CFO Council. But we're not calling it the CFO Council, it's the finance track, and this is the first of our 4 meetings that we have scheduled for this year. The next one's going to be in May. And really the objective here is to provide timely information to people in the technology community, hopefully young growing businesses that can benefit from knowledge that you're going to gain from these meetings. And it's very important for us to understand what pains you at night. What are the issues that are going to help you and your business grow in any way possible. So we have what we think is a really good program tonight. We have 4 wonderful panelists, and we have a great moderator, Alan Wink, who's got tremendous amount of experience in the capital markets. And we just would all like to wish you well, sit back and enjoy, and learn some really good stuff from the experts tonight. And with that, bring Don back up. Don can tell you a lot more about the New York Technology Council and what we're doing and where we're going. This is a great time to be in the tech space in New York, and it's alive and it's vibrant. And I've been practicing accounting for many years, more than I want to think about. And I can tell you, I'm having more fun now than I've had throughout my career, because it's just a really great time to be in the tech sector. So, Don, with that. Come on back up.
Thanks, Mike. I'll keep my comments brief. I'm told our moderator, Alan, is trying to score some Knicks tickets tonight. He wants to get out of here in time to scout some tickets to the game. So we'll try to get everybody out of here in time for the Knicks game. That said, I'd like to quickly introduce our 2012 organizational level sponsors, the accounting firm of EisnerAmper, Google, Power Space and Services, TGP Associates, Verizon, Information Builders, IBM, and the law firm of Frankfurt Kernet. Thanks to all of our 2012 sponsors for helping to support the organization. And if any of you are interested in sponsorship, by all means, see myself or any other NITEC representatives here tonight. I'd also like to give a special thanks to Citibank. Citibank has been a long-time partner of ours, and we're really grateful to them for all the help that they've done in organizing this event and the other events that we have throughout the year. Fernando and Glenn from Citibank, say hi. You've been very gracious to us over the years, and we thank them for their support. And that's all I have. I'm going to turn it over to Alan Wink, the moderator, for the rest of the night. And Alan, the stage is yours. We'll try and get you out of here in time for that Knicks game. Thank you very much.
If anybody has tickets you're looking to get rid of tonight, please see me afterwards. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming. My name is Alan Wink, and I'm responsible for the capital markets practice at EisnerAmper, which is a large regional accounting and consulting firm here in New York, New Jersey, and Philadelphia. We're about 1,200 people, and we're the 14th largest accounting and consulting firm in the United States. Before we get started, quick question. How many entrepreneurs in the audience looking to raise capital? I think you'll all benefit from the discussion we're going to have this evening. This conference is a little bit different than most. We're not going to be talking about angel dollars or venture capital or private equity or hedge funds. We're going to be talking about other classes of capital you can use to start your business. We've assembled a great panel this evening representing the foundation community, the grant community, the SBA lending community, and the venture debt community. The agenda for this evening, each of the panelists is going to have about 5 or 10 minutes for their opening remarks. They're going to handle topics, a brief bio about themselves, a description of their organization, a description of the type of capital they are providing, some of their investment criteria, structure and terms of their investment, IRR expectations, recent transactions, and their view of the lower end of the middle market. After their opening comments, I have some questions I'd like to ask the panel, and then we'll close it with questions from the audience. So the first speaker is going to be Andrea Yonah. And Andrea, if you could start, please.
Hello, everyone. My name is Andrea. I represent the BIRD Foundation, which is an acronym for the U.S.-Israel Binational Industrial Research and Development Foundation. It's a government matching program.
Do you want slides?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I thought I was just introducing myself.
I have advanced slides, but it works for you.
So I'll just continue. I've been with BIRD officially for a year. However, I've been working with the foundation for the last 20 years. Prior to being with BIRD, I represented the New Jersey Israel Commission, which was a state, or is a state commission that looks to increase economic development between New Jersey and Israel. Prior to that, I'd worked in technology, in content development, interface development, and I started my career in Israel, where I studied my master's and lived for about 10 years. I came to BIRD. I came to the BIRD Foundation because the first job that I ever had was with an Israeli educational software company that had a project with the international company Berlitz to develop multimedia language software for teaching English to speakers of other languages. And we received $1 million in funding from the BIRD Foundation, and that went basically towards the development staff and to my salary, and gave me my start really in technology. So like I said, BIRD is an acronym. It started back in the late 70s between the U.S. and Israeli governments. They each put in equal amounts to create a $110 million endowment. We operate off of the interest on that endowment plus repayments from successful projects. We look for a U.S. and an Israeli company that are collaborating on R&D for an innovative technology that they're looking to commercialize and get to market. We fund up to 50% of their R&D to a maximum of $1 million. We ask for the money to be repaid if the project is successful and revenue comes from it. If the project fails for whatever reason, we don't claim any repayment. In addition to that, it's non-dilutive funding, so we take no equity or IP. Since 1977, when we started, we've granted approximately $300 million. We've funded about 830 projects. In repayments, we've seen approximately $91 million, and we like to estimate that the economic impact has been approximately $8 billion in terms of sales and revenue from direct and indirect sales from companies. And in fact, just to digress for a second, we most recently commissioned an economic impact study for the U.S. economy to look at how the binationals, we're one of 3 binationals, have contributed to the U.S. economy. We're the industrial R&D, meaning we fund projects between companies, but there also happens to be 2 others, the BSF, the U.S. Israel Binational Science Foundation, and BARD, which is for agricultural research and development, and those are specifically towards funding academic R&D. We fund industrial R&D. In terms of the industries that we have invested in, you can see on the chart, we'll invest in any technology area. As long as the technology is innovative, we like disruptive, and we like risky, and we like technology that will in some way contribute. But as you can see, our the largest amount that we currently invest in is in the life sciences. And I'll get to that in a second because it hasn't always been the case. Early in the late 70s, it was mostly software and chip technologies, communications, electronics, and we've really seen a great rise in life sciences, and we've had to adapt and be flexible in terms of our model in order to be able to fund life sciences, because how do you fund drug development with $1 million? So I'll get to that. This basically describes the model. As I said, it's a matching fund. So we give up to 50%, and the companies together match that with their own money. So the projects, we're $1 million, they're $1 million at our maximum. So we're looking at a project with a scale of about $2 million. It can be larger. We just fund up to that amount. The two companies together give the match. And we are basically reimbursing their R&D expenses. R&D can be anything from equipment, manpower, to marketing and travel expenses relating to the project. We have a repayment schedule. I don't want to focus on it, but as I said, if the project is successful and revenue does come from it, we ask to be repaid. For the first year after the end of the project, we ask that they pay us back what we gave them at 0% interest. After that, there is interest that accrues up to 5 years. It works out to be approximately 8.4% a year. That maxes out at 5 years, so if they're repaying us after 5 years, it never goes up. But as I said, the flip side to that is if it fails, they pay nothing, it becomes a grant, and we take no equity or IP. As I said, we've gotten to be a little bit more, we've had to become flexible in order to be able to contribute in the pharma space. So what we've done there is we've defined a product, it can also be a stage in development. So we can invest in a particular milestone as opposed to a final drug. And we can be repaid in terms of a licensing agreement. So in that way, we've been able to fund and I have a lot of examples of a lot of interesting drug development. What is the submitting process? And this is most important because we have now announced 2 calls for proposals. We have 2 rounds coming up with deadlines coming up. We have our traditional fund and we have an energy fund, which I'll speak about in a minute. The traditional fund, we're looking for executive summaries with a deadline of March 14th coming up. With the final proposal, if the companies are given the go-ahead to submit one on April 24th, the decisions will be made on June 21st. How do we make our decisions? Who evaluates the projects? On the U.S. side, it's the NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology. On the Israeli side, it's the Ministry of Industry and Trade, what they call the Office of the Chief Scientist. They have their regular evaluation processes, what they use normally in all of their grants, and their evaluators that are evaluating all of their programs. And these are the same people that are evaluating our projects. They each give a score. We have a board meeting, and we select the projects to be funded. We fund approximately 10 to 12 projects per round. We have 2 rounds a year. As I said, we have a 3rd round now for energy. It's a smaller amount of money. It's appropriated funding, where we have an extra, we can approve approximately 3 to 4 projects. And it was appropriated for 2012, so we have a round coming after that as well. This is our energy. This came out recently in 2007 with the United States-Israel Energy Cooperation Act. The 2 government agencies are the U.S. Department of Energy. On the Israeli side is the Ministry of Energy and Water Research. It's the same. We have all of the same rules and regulations and processes. They gave it to us to administer because there's no extra overhead for this program. We can put all of the money into the projects that we're funding. We are looking to fund projects in areas such as solar power, alternative fuels, advanced vehicle technologies, smart grid, wind, and all other renewable energy or energy efficiency technologies. We accept these same projects into our traditional fund as well. So I usually tell the companies it depends on their schedule in terms of which fund to apply to. Same thing, $1 million. What's important here is that the date for the executive summary is May 3rd, the full proposal June 28th, and the decisions will be made on September 6th. All the information for that and forms are up on our website. It's a very simple process. I don't want to go into it, but if anyone has any questions, they should feel free to contact me. So these are just some of the examples of the U.S. grantees. Again, historically, we worked with a lot of larger U.S. companies, partnering with a smaller Israeli startup, because these companies had no experience, but they had great technology and were looking to get it to market. The U.S. companies were scouting for new technology to bring it to the U.S. market. It's proven to be very successful for the U.S. market. A lot of the Israeli companies located here, or they were acquired by their U.S. partner, and these technologies became part of our economy here, as opposed to going outside of our country to China or elsewhere. But these are just some of the examples. The other point I was going to bring up is that now we do look at projects between two smaller companies. As long as one of the two has the experience to get the product to market and has some financial stability. How am I doing time-wise? Okay, so I'm just going to go over a couple interesting projects for a few examples that I really like. I am going to start with my favorite one. I don't know if anyone has seen the TV show Glee. If anyone is a fan of Glee, about a year ago, the actor who plays the paraplegic got a Christmas present, a pair of robotic trousers that allowed him to stand up and walk. It was on Glee, and he said on the show, these were developed by a guy in Israel. And in fact, this project was, we invested into this project between the Israeli company Argo Medical and the U.S. company Allied Orthotics and Prosthetics. All the trials were at the Moss Rehabilitation Center in Philadelphia, and it's a project that we're very, very proud of. Another interesting one for hockey is a software program between an Israeli company called ACE and USA Hockey, and it's a software program that trains the players. And it allows the coach to be able to give them strategies and new ways of cognitive thinking in order to improve their game. I'll end with this one, though there are a lot of interesting ones. And this is a nanotechnology, and it's between an Israeli company, Rainbow Medical, and Zyvex. And it's the nanoretina, and it's an actual retina that they replace in the eye of somebody who is blind, and it's a simple, relatively simple surgical procedure, and the person after it's replaced can immediately see. As I said, there's a lot of in pharma, electro-optic software, healthcare, orthodontics, manufacturing, an interesting one in food technology that you can ask me about. Homeland Security is a very important area that we invest in. And as far as our energy fund, solar energy, we did a project with BP Solar, and waste energy and ethanol, and especially in water, salination. So I'll end with that. Thank you very much.
As we continue to talk about other forms of non-dilutive financing, our next speaker is going to be Ann Kayman, who's the CEO of the New York Grant Company.
Thank you, Alan. Is it okay if I stay here?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Slide list. My name is Ann Kayman. I'm CEO and owner of a wonderful company called the New York Grant Company based in Lower Manhattan. And it started as an outgrowth of an amazing job that I was privileged to have working in the Giuliani and Bloomberg administrations as Chief of Business Development for the City of New York. What a gig. And in that job, I learned to be conversant in literally dozens of programs that are economic programs to help stimulate investment, job growth, economic activity. And to my surprise, I grew up as a lawyer across the street, actually. I started in 1985. I'm still remembering the first fax machine that we got in the office back then with the thermal paper that ran down the floor. How far we've come. But I learned when I got that job in 1998 that there were all these programs available, federal, state, and local. And dozens, literally dozens, of things that were tax breaks and various kinds of subsidies and grants and energy discounts, a huge menu, if only people knew about these things. And so I set about learning about as much of them as I could. I was in city government, but there were a raft of programs in state government, a similar raft in federal government land, and nobody talked to anybody. So the feds didn't talk to the state was always arguing with the city, and the city departments didn't even talk to themselves. So I realized quickly that once I was done with my fabulous rent-a-job for the administration, that there was a consulting business to be had, which is what my New York grant company has been since 2002. We are a woman-owned certified business. We have won a Small Business of the Year from the Manhattan Chamber of Commerce last year, Enterprising Woman of the Year in 2009. So, but I still, I'm a small business struggling like many of you, I'm sure, and many of your clients, to make ends meet. I had the great joy of working with literally hundreds of startup companies, fast-growing tech companies in the heyday of Silicon Alley. We were on a roll back then. And never before, however, had I actually started my own company or even been in a small business. So, once again, I was quite surprised to then be on my own journey and realize the incredible guts and tenacity and chutzpah it takes to run and found and operate a small business. My God, I have such reverence for the local guy at the newspaper stand who puts his kids through college, because he's running a successful newspaper stand, and what it takes to get a business going and keep it running, from payroll to insurance, taxes, legal issues, etc., on down the line. So what we do, actually, is we help people find unconventional sources of money, meaning generally grants and other forms of subsidies from federal, state, and local government sources. Surprisingly, counterintuitively, New York City and the New York metro area is incredibly robust in offering programs of all sorts to help incentivize businesses of all shapes and sizes, from startups to established corporations, in getting them to grow and invest here. We started a mnemonic at the office, because that's really the only way I can remember things now, I'm so old, called RIME, R-I-M-E. If you're renewing a lease here, if you're investing in plant and equipment or jobs, if you're moving from one location to another, or if you're expanding an existing business here, you are probably eligible for one or more or many more programs. I'll give you a case in point. There was a company that moved to New York City for the first time called Eidos Media. God, they're a great company. They started this software product out of Milan, believe it or not, which is a platform that allows major newspapers like the Wall Street Journal to edit content on any medium throughout the world on a seamless, continuous basis. That's my non-technical explanation for it. They opened their first office in the United States after developing and commercializing this product abroad on Wall Street about, 6-7 years ago. They started with about 10, 15 people, selling through to the Wall Street Journal. They've got all of the Murdoch papers, etc., with this novel platform that they developed. And in doing so, even though they were just starting up operations here and quite small, they received what will turn out to be a couple of $1 million worth of economic incentives. That's money they never have to give back. It's in the form of rent credits every 6 months over 5 years for every square foot that they lease in New York City. God bless. They will receive a 5-year exemption from occupancy tax, which is a ridiculous luxury tax that you get charged by the City of New York for the privilege of renting commercial office space here. It translates for some companies to tens of thousands of dollars a year, a real headache. Well, they've got, this little company has a 5-year exemption from that headache of a tax. But they also get a relocation credit against their city business income taxes of $3,000 per head per year times 12 years. And the kicker is that this program of the City of New York is refundable in cash for the first 5 years. So suppose you're just starting out here, you're going to have losses, right? If your accountant's doing his job, what are the accountants here? Eisner. You're gonna probably see losses because you're investing in the growth of your business, and that's natural. Well, even in that scenario, especially in that scenario, what's cool about this particular relocation credit is that you can refund the difference of the credits in cash. So this little company with 10 employees to start gets $30,000 a year to start, refundable in cash if their credits exceed their tax liability to the city. That means a check from the New York City Department of Finance. And then every year, and as they grow and ramp up, the credits actually increase. So over time, that's worth easily $500,000 to them. They also get 12 years of energy discounts, translating into about a 15% savings on their electric bills every year, and probably some other stuff I've forgotten. But, I mean, that is really a great little case study for a little tech company coming in from out of the country and starting up their first office ever here in the United States. And we have many, many other examples in the office. And by the way, you don't have to be coming from abroad to take advantage of these benefits, although that helps because relocation credits are tied to your relocating maybe from Nassau County or from Westchester or from Canada. That's the hook or the trigger with that particular program. It's a very, very rich benefit. Anyway, the state also has a raft of programs, and the new Governor Cuomo, has made it a very top priority of his to stimulate what? Jobs, jobs, and jobs. So he has identified another $800 million in funding from the state. So put aside those city programs I was just talking about, the state of New York has its own menu now of programs, $800 million worth available right now to help stimulate business activity, economic growth everywhere in New York State. So there are funding applications that are accepted on a rolling basis, whether it's for an energy efficient installation in an office, or it's for a data center or a call center that's creating a lot of jobs, and many other examples. So I encourage you to look at these things carefully because it is out there, it's available, and if you bundle these various benefits up, it can turn into some serious cash or savings, cash equivalent for any given company, and of course we're here to help you. And I'm only as good as my team, so I have two of my staff members here to help you, Bernard and Jonathan, and we're on call for you. Our initial consultation, totally free of charge. We're only going to serve those companies that we think have a fighting chance, a good chance of getting some of this program money. We're not going to pursue economic programs or incentives for you unless we really vet you carefully, and we do that for you free of charge so that we can pre-screen you pretty carefully, and then we put you through the system, so to speak, and handle all your applications, all the dealing with these government agencies, wherever they might be, so that headache is off your shoulders. And we're only going to go through that process for you because it's arduous, unless, if we're sure that we can qualify you for something. Thank you.
Thanks, Ann. I guess we've now heard from Ann and Andrea on two programs that really don't have strings attached. We don't have to pay the money back. Now we're going to hear from two speakers from the banking community who also have programs, and unfortunately those programs require repayment. So next speaker is Don DiMartini we'll talk about SBA loans from Citibank.
Okay, thank you, Alan. And again, on behalf of Citibank, I'd like to welcome everybody here, members and future members of the New York Technology Council. Again, just listening to some of the benefits and privileges, if you will, that you get as part of the membership is something I certainly take advantage of if I were in your shoes. I have the privilege of managing the Small Business Administration programs here at Citibank in New York, and just by quick show of hands, how many folks here are already in business? Just a quick show. So more than half the room, that's helpful. How many are just thinking about it? You got a business plan written, you're ready. I've got one right there that's got a business plan I'm supposed to look at later. So some new businesses. A couple here. Let me tell you this very, very briefly. About 25 years ago, native New Yorker, I went out west to school. They said, go west. I did. I went to California, went to Berkeley. My second year, started a business. And it was a restaurant business on a paddle boat in the wine country, in a little river in Napa. Actually exists. In an area that some of you have got the pleasure of being out in Northern California. It's an area called the Carneros. So Napa, Sonoma, Pacific Ocean, Little V. There's a little river that actually goes from North San Francisco Bay up. And I had the challenge of raising capital. I was 20 years old. I knew how to make mozzarella. I liked pizza. And back in those days, I've got gray hair too, there wasn't a lot of that kind of product available, if you will. So we did some unusual things. A buddy of mine and his wife, we literally canvassed a couple of local producers. I was lucky, it was the heyday, mid-'80s, Alice Waters, Wolfgang Puck in LA, so we kind of knocked on a bunch of doors, went to local farmers, found a couple of initial investors. Someone said, hey, you ever heard of something called the SBA? Nah. It's a government program, no way, they want blood, they want to come after my cat. I don't think so. But in fact, what we did wind up doing was talking to a local office in San Francisco, and guess what? We were turned down. Didn't qualify. Well, there was a nice gentleman, cowboy actor from Southern California, former governor of the state who was president at the time, and they had cut the strings on how SBA lending was done. There wasn't a whole lot of direct lending available to people with a good idea. Now, we had the boat. We actually had the boat. Brought it down from Oregon on a flatbed. That was an adventure. We can talk about it far afterwards. But literally, and had just a little bit of seed capital to get the dock. And the SBA folks said to us at the time, in the San Francisco, very nicely, they were very polite, and said, nope, sorry, we can't give you any money because we don't, in fact, give any money out unless it's a disaster. Well, for us, at that point, $27,000 change seemed like a whole lot of money to two guys and somebody who was still in college, and wound up, again, raising that money through this investment process. But one thing I learned very, very early in that was, this SBA thing, all right, something. Cut a couple of administrations later, and I don't care what your politics are, Tea Party, Republican, Communist, doesn't make a difference. There's a taxpayer program out there that we all contribute to. Why not take advantage of it? So a few years later, successful business, by the way, paid for college, no college debt when I was done, came back east, and then sort of wandered in some perilous fashion into lending, economic development lending. In Williamsburg, 1991. Crackheads on the street, not moms and, Prada strollers and the whole thing. It was a very different world 21 years ago. And interestingly enough, one of the first things I was handed at what was then called the Local Development Corporation, they still exist, so you had that in-place industrial park program, and they said, you've got a 7A program. I said, 7A, what's 7A? Said there are two flagship programs that Uncle Sam has through the U.S. Small Business Administration. And I imagine a lot of you, because you are in the tech business, in tech fields, you consume this sort of stuff that you do every day. And I do have friends from my Berkeley days who have done well, some have not done so well, but still in the tech business. You're aware that probably our president made an announcement about 2 weeks ago that he was going to raise the SBA to the cabinet level position that it used to be. How do you create jobs? How do you retain jobs in a tough economy? You guys are going to do it, right? It's the speech. It's the standard stump speech. We expect that new small businesses, every politician's going to say it. Every would-be politician is going to say it. You're going to turn on the news. You're going to be on someone's Twitter feed. You're going to look at something on your iPad, your Droid, your Nook, whatever it might be, and you're going to see something in tonight's news about creating and retaining jobs. Interesting fact, SBA. Everyone thinks, oh, paperwork, what am I going to do? How am I going to get this thing done? I'll put it to you very simply. For those of you who are in business, you probably had an idea at some point. Something. Whether it was a project that Yonah's company, that the foundation can do, this partnership between Israel and the U.S., creating products, getting things to market. I love that. That's exactly what we look for in the SBA. Or what Ann was talking about, if there are government-sponsored sorts of initiatives out there, take advantage of them. People always ask, and I've been doing this now for close to 20 years, in September, that I've been looking and working with SBA projects. The common thing is small business. That's the first two letters of the acronym. I mentioned just briefly, and I want to finish the comment, there are two flagship programs that Uncle Sam sponsors. 7A, just keep it simple. It's the all-purpose white flower program for small businesses. Tiny little loans, as small as $10,000. And something that the Small Business Jobs Act, again, don't care what your politics are, but was created by the Jobs Act about 1.5 years ago. The max loan, again, minimum, that $10,000, the max is $20 million now. If we're doing the second flagship program, which is called 504, allows you to buy a building, your condo, big pieces of machinery and equipment, things you can bolt down and have a long serial number or a barcode attached to it. But at the end of the day, it all boils down to the same thing. It's Main Street lending. And Main Street can mean Broadway, it can literally mean Main Street. We've got a Main Street in Queens, as well as, lots of Main Streets upstate, high streets if we're in England. But we don't want to hear about folks who might be foreign. I don't care if you're foreign born, but this is taxpayer money, paying for a guarantee, and that's really what the SBA is about. And what we try to do at Citi is we provide a guarantee through the SBA to you, the small business, so we're going to try to do riskier things. I'm here to briefly comment, and I hope we have a very robust conversation during the Q&A so all four of us can chip in, answer your questions. But essentially what we're looking for are a few things, and these I'd probably write down. Fancy business plans, they're great. If you're trying to raise $100 million in private equity from some Russian oligarch, go for it. SBA is a little bit more straightforward. We'd like to understand, and this is true of Citibank, I think we do it particularly well, but it's true of any lender doing SBA lending. We want to understand that you understand your business. That could be a page. That can be 10 pages. It could, in fact, be 100 pages. It's normally somewhere between 2 and 10. What we do care about, though, are the numbers. Not that they're perfect. One of the first businesses I looked at in Williamsburg years and years ago, truly, was somebody who was going to do organic cotton T-shirt production. Pretty racy stuff for 1991, organically sourced. No one ever heard of that term. There was no Michael Pollan on the horizon or anything like that. And this person said, I'm going to do this. I'm going to get my cotton from this family farm that I know down south in North Carolina. I said, what are you going to do if it rains and the crop is destroyed? And they stopped cold. Great business plan, looked good, sounded good, really kind of fun cover. It was actually an organic cotton cover on the business plan. But what can we do with it? They literally stopped to think about what happens if their product and the raw goods that they use to make the product gets interrupted. Life cycle, it's kind of not so good. A few years later, good guy comes along and says, I've got a laser that I'm interested in getting to market. Very specific. We're going to do surgeries with it. It's specifically for dental use. It's going to be bloodless so that you're not going to be afraid to go see your dentist and that sort of thing. The business plan was absolutely letter perfect. And I don't mean that it was so perfect, the grammar was beautiful, that Shakespeare had authored, some of the addenda or anything like that, but it all made sense. That's what I mean by that it was perfect. Tell your story. Tell it effectively. The numbers made sense. He knew how much the raw goods were. At what point he was probably going to need to hire employees. And here's the funny thing. As Alan said, I don't necessarily have strings, but I expect to get paid back because there's somebody younger or newer than you that's behind you that's going to come into the system and ideally is going to get the benefit of the guarantee. SBA loans tend to do well. 3% default rate on the 504 loan program. You own your business shop, you're unlikely to walk away. Yesterday I had the pleasure of sitting with a client and one of our Citibank relationship managers. They do sound. And I'm sitting there and it looks sort of like it's a Starship Enterprise bridge. And they show the suspended sound booth with these gigantic rubber things, and there's the sound booth, and he goes, hey, what does this interesting fun thing with this motherboard? And boom. there's Taylor Swift doing the Super Bowl commercials. Yeah, I did the sound for that. It's cool. 504 deal. The guy is spending $4 million and investing another $1 million in capital to buy his condo. The business is only 3 years old. Sales. He's managed to survive. Here's another tip. Number 2, 2012, the economy's doing some funny things. New York is reasonably stable, reasonably, by whatever definition that means today. Just be able to tell us, be able to tell anybody, be able to tell your kitchen cabinet, your CPA, your accountant, what have you been doing in the last 2 to 3 years to manage your money? How do things look? If I asked anyone in this room, from this podium, sitting with you later, having a beer, telling me about how we got a paddle boat down from Portland to San Francisco, long story again. If I asked you, what does your profit and loss statement look like? And I get the cross-eyed thing, let me call Alan, I'm not sure what, let me check with my accountant. Scary. You're a startup, you're a tech business, you're supposed to be nimble, quick, know your product. What are you doing with your numbers? How many people here, don't raise your hands, so I don't want anyone to be embarrassed, how many people know what the balance sheet is? Nod your head, yes, slowly. Okay, few. It's good. At the end of the day, if you can't sit and talk to your banker, talk to Yonah, talk to me, talk to any of each other in this room about what your financials look like, how am I supposed to have faith in lending to you? You know, every one of you, including myself, we contributed to the success. I know this sounds very odd coming from the podium, but contributed to the success of where Citibank is today. We went through some tough times as a business a few years ago, and thanks to Americans, we're still here. Thank you. Literally, thank you. And people asked me as we were gathering and just chatting a little bit before we sat down, is what's different about Citibank from me, the small business? Just a couple of extra zeros. We still have a business plan, we still have a profit and loss statement, a balance sheet, a stock that goes up and goes down. Sometimes it goes down a little more than it goes up, but it is doing what it's doing. We've got to stay nimble. So here's another piece of advice. When you're doing a loan, any loan, the expectation is from Uncle Sam through the SBA, for us or any other lender doing SBA loans, is that when you borrow the money, you're going to have to pay it back on the first day. Starting a little bit, again, generous terms, fixed rate, 20 years, 25 years for a mortgage to buy your condo. That's what my sound guy's getting from us. 5% money from one side of it, and then he's getting 4% money on the other side of it. That's a 20-year loan. He knows what his payment's going to look like. It's a good deal. 7A, a whole lot even more flexible. You can use it for just about anything. But again, please remember the difference between a loan and a grant or some other angel equity or anything like that is there's an expectation you're going to get paid back. I think the last comment I want to make is at this day and age, one of the things all lenders have learned, and I hope you as small businesses have learned, is that if you tell your story effectively, and this is what I mean about Main Street lending, is the expectation is that we're going to fight to get the deal done. Does it make sense? If it's pie in the sky and we can't put our fingers around, we can't wrap our arms around and understand what the deal is, what your company is doing, what service, what product you're going to bring to market. Ann can't help you because she can't pin it down. That's what she means by vetting. Yonah can't even talk about this cool, interesting relationship between Israel and the U.S. and trying to make those kinds of things work. Yeah, there's some big glamorous names there. They all started small. FedEx, UPS, Pizza Hut, SBA loans originally. Tech is where we are. It's 2012. It's straightforward stuff. Have a good plan, understand what your numbers look like, and be able to articulate that. You don't have to be Shakespeare again. You just have to be able to tell us who you are, what you need the money for, and ideally be able to pay us back in a reasonable way. Thank you.
Just to add one more comment to Don's remarks. I mean, in today's day and age, being able to borrow money at 5% for 20 or 25 years is certainly a lot cheaper than getting equity put in your business today. So just keep that in mind. It sure is a reasonable source of capital. Our final speaker is Mike Moretti, who's with Silicon Valley Bank. And Mike's going to talk a little bit this evening about the venture debt market.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. And thanks for a lot of good comments and advice from my previous speakers. Just real quick back on my background and then Silicon Valley Bank, and then we'll send it to venture debt. I've been with SVB for 8 years now, here in New York. Started my career, I can say it to some people in the audience, I think you're old enough, at Irving Trust Company. Yes, which is now back in New York. I spent 9 years combined at the two institutions. I started in the 80s and 90s with credit lending security. At the end of the 90s, got the internet bug, and myself and a partner started an internet company here in New York. So the entrepreneurs in the audience, I can definitely sympathize. We had a great 4-year run. Loved it. We learned a lot. Steep learning curve, really challenging, but just a phenomenal experience. After about 4 years, when our VC bought our IP back, it was time to move on, and that's when I joined Silicon Valley Bank. And right now, for me, it's the best of all worlds. I love the tech sector, love working with entrepreneurs. We spend a lot of time with the VC community. But I don't miss being in the ring, but I love having a front row seat and watching what you guys do your stuff, which is fabulous. At Silicon Valley Bank, we've been around for about 30 years. Basically, we're a commercial bank. We do have an investment bank, a merchant banking arm, which will invest equity in the venture capital firms and startups. Smaller part of the business. The primary part is the commercial bank. Day-to-day banking, foreign exchange, letters of credit, full range of loan products. We have a bunch of offices around the U.S., but the whole tech sector is divided geographically. I'm part of the New York team, so our world are the VCs and tech startups in the tri-state area. And I should say, SCB, we're a niche player, not a universal bank like Citibank that can work with anybody at any stage. We just work with tech companies, and just from, say, zero to a couple $100 million in revenues. If they're in that target market, that's a potential client for SCB. Outside of that, it's just not a potential client for SCB. Again, we're a boutique firm. I guess in terms of, let's go around to the venture debt. There's a number of debt products we have. Venture debt is one of the more interesting ones. In fact, anybody who first joins SCB and then sees the venture debt deals that are done, they take a look at it and think the bank's out of its mind and wonders why it's not bankrupt and long been shut down. These are loans that we make to technology startups. The characteristics often are these are companies that are pre-revenue. They're tech companies, so there's not a lot in the way of hard assets. There's no PP&E, inventory, there's some IP. Probably some cash, but they're all losing money, so they're burning through it. It's going to disappear at some point. We don't do personal guarantees. So you look at these companies and we lend the money, and you wonder how are we ever going to get repaid? And there's only one way, equity. As the name implies, venture debt, there's a venture capital firm who's invested, or firms who've invested in these companies. And if people know the VC model, if they're staying true to it, most of the VCs do, they will invest in a Series A round, and they will reserve for future rounds after that. So, as we talked about debt, it's different from equity. We'd like to see it repaid, hopefully on a timely basis. And that's only to be repaid one way, through existing or future liquidity. And with startups that are venture-backed, a VC can be a source of future liquidity. That can make sure that the loan stays current. So that's one of the key things that we focus on when we do venture debt. Who the VC is, or VCs again, how well do we know them? If we know them extremely well, we will be very aggressive in terms of lending venture debt. Just quickly, some of the terms that we provide. Amounts can be $1 to $10 million. Interest rates run the gamut, 5 to 10%. Small upfront fee, say 0.5% of the loan amount. And the key thing is, yes, this can be dilutive financing. We are going to get warrants in these deals. They run typically between, we quote warrant coverage as a percentage of the amount of the loan. We're always going to be careful. When we quote, we're going to say we're going to get 5% warrant coverage. Sometimes people think it's going to be 5% of the company. That's not the case. It's 5% of, say, $1 million if that's the amount of the loan, so $50,000 of warrants. Priced at whatever the most recent equity round was done at. So oftentimes that equates to maybe 1/4 or 0.5% ownership in the company. So that's high level what venture debt is. It's a very active market. Unfortunately, we're not the only players in it, but we're very active here and across the country, actually across Europe too. But it's particularly in New York, it's been growing in activity at a significant level. With all the startup activity that's happening in New York and the sectors that we'll focus on are the sectors that New York's well known for. media, digital media, e-commerce, ad tech, fintech. So as long as there's a tech somewhere in it, and as long as there's some intellectual property companies got, we're interested in hearing if there's an opportunity for us. I'll leave it at that.
Thanks, Mike. Let me kick off the questions a little bit. I know a lot of early stage companies that come to our firm, they always need capital, and they always need capital yesterday. How long should the process take to bring money into a company today? Maybe for each of the panels, could just talk about that just for a moment in terms of the capital that they concentrate in. Mike, do you want to start?
I'll start to finish. The typical time frame, we with our clients, 3-step process, we need their financial information. Typically, say last year's historicals, this year's projections, maybe some company information. Once we have that, the clock starts. We'll usually go through that, prepare a term sheet, assuming we get there in about a week. Part 2, assuming we agree on a term sheet, is to get it approved. That process will take maybe a week and a half. Part 3, then, is to document it. That's the part that's out of our control. It's more in our clients' lawyers' control. Typically, that will take 2 to 3 weeks, but if the client's not in a hurry, the law firm wants to negotiate every 0.5 times, really run up their fee, or if they don't know debt deals. A lot of times we run into law firms that they know equity transactions, they don't know a lot of those, they haven't seen a debt deal. So there's a long education process we have to go through. So typically, should be about 6-7 weeks start to finish. If the client's not in a hurry and wants to drag it out, it can be 2-3 months. We've had clients who are in a very big hurry and it's time to an acquisition, and we've done everything start to finish in a week. So we'll work around our client's time frame.
Don, maybe you could.
Yeah, I'm listening to that is a marked difference. I mean, here's the thing: if we've all seen the statistic, and we'll have a different percentage depending on our sector, who we are, how old our business is. But if you start your business waiting for a loan, as an example, you're cooked, literally. Access to capital. I mean, not just because it's the title of this evening's conference, or hopefully the information you're going to walk away with, but anticipating what your company is going to need today, tomorrow, next week. You don't come just for one loan or one form of credit or whatever the dollars are that you need to grow and move the business forward. Timeline, and I'm not talking about Facebook's heinous expeditions or whatever they did there, but just timeline in general, complete package. There's the term that we all hear. Did you come to the table with what we asked for? 3 years of financials. What if I'm a startup? Okay, then there's that business plan again, that pesky business plan. You better have some outside collateral. From soup to nuts, with all the docs, all the things that we might need to make a credit decision to evaluate your business idea, evaluate you. It is personal. Making a loan to you, looking to your business space back, looking at some collateral, ideally at the end of the rainbow. I've seen it done literally in 30 days for a government-guaranteed loan. And I've seen loans take up to 3 years to close because there's real estate and construction involved. So the bank, us, we might lend 90% loan-to-value, which is what we do with SBA financing. 90% loan-to-value, pretty high. Buy that $1 million machine, we can lend $900,000. But at the end of the day, if there's real estate, maybe we're going to wait for the certificate of occupancy. With all due respect to any elected official, past, present, to be elected, it takes a while to get those things from the city. We understand that. We'll work with it. That's why a loan can take a long time to close if it involves real estate in the city of New York. It's getting better. DOB's online. Thank you, tech people, somewhere in the last few years. So it can be a very short period. It can be a very long period. You drive the bus. We tell that to all of the customers, to all the small businesses we work with. You're the quarterback of the deal. You're driving it. And to Mark's point, if you're giving us a complete package, they do. Some clients want to drag their feet. I want to wait till next year because of tax consequences, because Alan told me to do that. That's okay. We're okay with that. The approval's good for a few years, as long as your financial situation stays the same.
And you're working with clients today. How long do you tell them the process takes?
Well, we're going to ride along with their decision-making in terms of locating their business, generally speaking. because the economic programs that I work with most frequently are generally tied to real estate decisions. Happy to see Jennifer here from CB Richard Ellis. She can back me up on this. So the programs that are economically driven from federal, state, and city government have to do with, a leasing decision, for example. Maybe you're not buying that building, or maybe you are, but maybe you're leasing that office on Wall Street or what have you. In that case, as soon as you are committed to that lease, these government incentives kick in. So oftentimes I'm writing along for a decision from the client to sign on the dotted line of a lease, and then make sure that they get their benefits as promptly as possible. Sometimes even we're able to look retroactively. Suppose you signed a lease, 3 months ago, and you're not even in the space because it has to be. Well, there are ways that I have to go back in time to get benefits that you might have forgotten or not known that you had. One case in point, we have a wonderful client, Priceline, and they started. California company, also based in Stamford, Connecticut, started their first office here in New York City in 2007. And their accountants, shame on PricewaterhouseCoopers, I advised them that they were not. Are you with PwC? No. You're with Eisner. You're with the good guys. I like PwC. Sorry. But they were told by the accounting firm operating out of state, actually, that they were not eligible for anything. Nix, forget it. Don't waste your time. And I was here peddling, I'm like, yeah, you're eligible for stuff, Priceline. And lo and behold, in 2010, when they decided to expand their leasehold in New York City, they've done tremendously well here. They're in an expansion mode. They're in an acquisition mode. William Shatner's now on Broadway. But seriously, I went back to them and said, guys, you are eligible, and I don't care what PwC told you. Just let me show you the money. And we went back and recaptured the stuff that they had left on the table from 2007. One benefit alone for one period of time got them a check for $160,000. .com. That was really good to be able to deliver that to them. And so there you have it.
And Andrea, with the Bird Foundation program, once an applicant applies, how long does it take before they actually get capital?
So the actual process is pretty quick. From executive summary to decisions on approvals is approximately 4 months. After that, the two companies need to come to their own agreements together. Since we're not taking equity, since we're not taking IP, they have to come to those agreements together. That can take up to a couple months for the companies, or it can be quick depending on the companies and their process. But once we know that that agreement is in place, we're not a part of it, we just need to know that both companies sign it. At that point in time, we can start funding. The project can start before, and the funding can be retroactive from the date that they submitted their full-scale proposal, from the first of the month of the date that they submitted that proposal.
And you had mentioned in your remarks that your program really is sort of a matching program. You're matching the capital that the two organizations are putting in. Do you see a lot of opportunities where the two companies don't have the capital to match against your dollars?
Then our program probably wouldn't apply to them.
Okay.
So the two companies have to have, at least half for the match.
And just a question for the two bankers on the panel. I'm sure you guys see many more deals today that you can't fund. What are the things that turn you off when you see someone coming into your institution looking for capital?
It's a good question. Just say, I don't think there's any deal that is sort of an infinite ability not to be funded. It's just at that moment there's something about that deal. It could be that really they have no ability to repay. It's a loan. I wish we were, or I personally wish that we had the ability to do just equity. I love that idea. That guy from San Jose, let's take care of his business. He's got a good idea. Doesn't quite work that way. Now with the SBA programs, the guarantee's got to take care, as I said before, to the next person back. Being unprepared, and the big kicker is, I'd like as much as you can give me. Wow. Be specific. Seriously, whether it's $50,000, $500,000, $1 million, whatever the menu of your favorite restaurant is, it's nice to go in there with a big appetite and say, I want one of everything. You really can't do that. Be specific. Understand the difference between a loan or a line. You don't go out and buy a car with a credit card. It doesn't make sense. You don't buy a house with a credit card. That's a line of credit. We can do that. We're actually going to be doing it very shortly here at Citi, something called cap lines beginning in April. $1 million to start, no borrowing base. Alan can tell you about borrowing bases. But $1 million line, that makes sense. But I need to buy a thing. And the thing costs $500,000. Here's the serial number. It has a useful life. It's going to be valuable for a certain amount of time. My same sound guy yesterday, site visit, his technology, literally the technology he uses to do these commercials and these YouTube things and whatever else his clients are asking him to do, has a useful life. A lot of Apple stuff, a lot of big, heavy stuff we don't see as general consumers, although you guys might get in the audience. Useful life of about 4 to 5 years. That's longer than the average, Apple PC sort of thing. But in that case, so do you really want a 10-year-old note on a $200,000 piece of equipment that's going to only be good for a year, 2 years, 3 years? Nope. So that's what's going to be a turnoff. Know what you want the money for. I want $183,000. I need $1,245,000 or $1,050,000. Be as specific as possible. And the bankers, and I dare say anybody who's looking to make any investment in you or your company, they're going to stand up and say they know what they're talking about.
Mike, same question?
Yeah, just on our end, typically three reasons why we would not move forward on a transaction. One, as I mentioned, if it's not in our target market, not a tech company, we'll pass on that. Most times, it's never a negative reflection on the company. We've had to say no to a lot of great companies. They're just not in our target market. I've seen the bank. I've been there 8 years. It is pretty disciplined about sticking in its knitting of tech companies. Secondly, it just may be too small for us. Our minimum really is at least a $500,000 transaction size, preferably $1 million. We've had some come in request $100,000, $150,000. It's tough to do those. Besides, they take as much time to do as a $10 million deal. There are closing costs. We'll charge $5,000 or $10,000 ourselves. We'll also charge them our legal fees. So if we're going to do, say, even a $250,000 loan, but all the closing costs are going to be $20,000, $25,000 maybe, for us, that's not a way to start a relationship. You send a loan and then take 10% of it right off the top for fees and closing. So it is too small, secondly. Thirdly, and to all the varied points about these are loans, if there's just not sufficient liquidity. We run into it quite often that a company needs $1 million, $2 million, and we're dealing with an owner who has maybe significant shareholding, 50% of the company, 75% of the company, 100% sometimes, and they want to maintain that. And they get focused, sometimes too focused, on their equity ownership. And I need $2 million. I really have to ramp and get to the next level, but I want to maintain 100% ownership. And if I can take on debt, post-closing, maybe I'll have 99% of the company. If I take on some money from a venture capital firm, I'm going to have 50% or something like that. So I got to go debt. They forget there's a difference between debt and equity, and we talked about in terms of equity. Equity investors, they want to get as high a multiple as they can, obviously, but they know there's going to be 0x on some of those deals. Lenders, we really want a 1x, or maybe 1x plus interest. Not a 0.9x, not even a 1.5x. We want a 1x. So, and we increase the chances of that happening by making sure there is and or will be sufficient liquidity to repay.
Mike, what kind of covenants are typically on those deals?
I'll tell you, the early stage venture debt deals typically do not have any financial covenants. For the early stage companies, pre-revenue or just getting revenues, they're just not in a position to support covenants yet. Later stage, then we layer in 1, 2. Typically, there's a balance sheet covenant as they mature a little bit more, quick ratio, current ratio, to make sure that they can support it. As they grow and get older, then we'll migrate to an income statement covenant, revenue tracking, EBITDA tracking, assuming they're profitable.
And Don, on the SBA side, are there covenants?
Absolutely, and no question saying that. Think of any commercial selling any product or service, it's a handshake. And all documents are in 2012, whether they're PDFs or electronic, they're emailed, however you get them, it's your handshake being written down for posterity. Remember, I'm making a loan to you individually, looking to your business to pay me back, and maybe and ideally there might be some collateral at the end of the rainbow. So personal guarantees, owners 20% or more, absolutely. But we're also going to try not to tie up in knots. It's again a loan to you and your business in that order.
Thank you. Why don't we open up to the audience for questions?
Could I ask a quick
Sure.
question? I think it might be relevant for everybody here because I can see approaching each one of you on that panel with my particular business to follow up in terms of contacting you through NY Tech. I am a member. Is there an email framework? How can I do that without having to fight through the crowds because I have to go pick up a kid at soccer practice?
That's why God made Google.
I'm sorry?
That's why God made Google.
Okay.
Google our names. I'm sure you're going to be able to find any of us.
Alan knows how to find this too.
And I think if you've attended tonight, there's an expectation that our contact information, I'm assuming, I'm hopefully speaking for all of us, will be available at minimum phone and email, not address.
Okay, or through
Absolutely.
Eric over there, our mentor of sorts?
Please.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
We have a microphone going around.
Start this way and work my way back.
Hi, Jennifer Ogden, CDRE. I actually had a question for Ann. How do these startups typically find out about you? Is it through their accountants, their lawyers, or their real estate brokers?
By any means necessary. I've been in this city and started my career here in 1985. And I had the beautiful job with the city government where my Rolodex, if there is still that word, got very fat. And so we have a very beautiful, wonderful network of friends and colleagues, some of whom are here today that we've known for many years. So we just try to get the word out. Events like this, people like you. The real estate industry, frankly, is our best ally because when you're trying to make a deal, and I can sweeten that deal by reducing the cost to the client by, $5 to $15 a square foot, then that makes the deal very, very attractive. And after you beat up the landlord to get all the great concessions, and then I come in and help, get the economic juice that's out there, then we can make music together. We can make deals.
Hi, Ed Martino. You hit a nerve when you talked about diluting ownership, and I was wondering maybe to start with you, Michael. Can you give an example, an anonymous example, of how you come up with the percentage of warrants that you want in your ability to help fund the company?
The glib answer is we try to get as much as we can. The reality is, typically these could be competitive situations. There are some players, not us, but others who might put larger tickets on the table that are looking, their goal, they start with a percentage ownership of the company. They want to have 1% of the company, 1.5% of the company. For us, we typically look at it more, as I said, warrant coverage, which is a percentage of the loan. And those, depending on the deal, can range anywhere from 2% to 8% warrant coverage. And that often translates, as I mentioned before, into about 0.25% to 0.5% fully diluted ownership. So our starting point score is a percentage. And I think the majority of the companies think that way, the majority of the VCs think that way with the warrant coverage. And it's going to end somewhere materially less than 1% ownership.
This is a question also for you, Mike. How do you define a tech company? You said it means lots of different things. Is it core, IP in terms of patent, software, biotech, or is it a social media new, business model that someone's going to roll out?
We've definitely evolved in that. When the company started 30 years ago, I remember I think you were looking at companies that are hardware companies, software companies, chip manufacturing companies. Up until probably 10 years ago, 10, 12 years ago, that really was it. We needed to see software in the in the business description. As the market's evolved, the bank has evolved, the definition has definitely expanded. And as I mentioned, in New York, we'll work with digital media companies, social media companies. We have a lot of clients in the online advertising space. 5-6 years ago, a couple of our clients were acquired recently, AdMail by Google, DinnerClick by Yahoo. 5-6 years ago, I don't even know if they were around. If they were, they would not fit in the definition of technology companies. Now, they're right down the middle. We've definitely expanded. E-commerce companies. We deal with a company called Bonobos. Men's clothes. 4 years ago, I think our credit people would have thrown up all of that. You bring a men's clothing store, just because they have a website. But it's a couple of things. We've expanded the definition just because so much is going on online. Ad dollars, consumer spending. We just think it's a macro trend that is only going to continue and get bigger and bigger and bigger. And the other thing that helps, and we talked about venture debt, SVB spends a lot of time with the venture capital community. A lot of time. They are a core reason we have been successful, and if we're going to want to continue to be successful, we need to stay actively involved in the venture capital community. And present my company, Bonobos, 2 West Coast VCs, Excel and Lightspeed are in there. We work with those firms for 15, 20 years. If they've made an investment in a company, that company's going to probably fit a definition of that company.
So we're next.
This is Craig Strong from Savant Financial. We're an existing established service business, and we're now building a product, trying to get into the product marketplace, building a piece of software that's going to change the way people manage software projects. We just recently closed a $400,000 loan, SBA loan with Citibank. Thank you very much. And I had just 2 quick questions, one for Ann and one for Andrea. I'll start with Andrea. The question was, we recently actually submitted a proposal to the SBIR, Small Business Innovation Research, which is very similar to what you're talking about, but only for the federal government. How would a company like mine, small business, get to know about Israeli companies? Do you have matchmaking sessions? Is there something on your website where I can find maybe compatible companies to work with?
That's a very good question. People ask us, do we have lists? And there's so many new companies, and there are always new companies all the time. So we're not really so much in the business of maintaining lists. However, we do work with companies and help them. It's kind of an interactive process where we help to introduce companies to each other. What we normally expect from the companies, we don't, on the one hand, we do matchmaking. We do it through events. We do it just through the companies that we network with. On the other hand, there's a fine line between that and being the company's business development person. So we can't really serve as a business development person in helping the company to identify who their market is. So we do request, we kind of have a spreadsheet, we say the company has to do their homework, they have to identify who is their market. And that happens a lot from the Israeli side with the smaller companies wanting to, I want to meet someone at IBM, or Johnson & Johnson. They have to know who their market is, who is the division that they would like to meet, and then we can help provide them with that introduction. In the case the other way, we can help provide information towards different, it's like science, for example, we can provide access. There's a great website that identifies companies by the type of life science, if they're medical device, diagnostics, pharma, and it lists a lot of the companies in Israel, so we can direct them there. Once they have, and sometimes they'll ask me, I don't know their business as well as they do. They do a little bit of research, they can come up with a couple of companies right away, and then we can come in and make the introduction, do a little bit of due diligence for them, let them know if this is a company that they would be interested in meeting with. And then we're much better on the making the introductions and managing the doing some relationship management. Companies need to do their homework as well, though.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Jeannie McPhil-Stolen with a company called ShopToco, which is a B2B e-commerce site. I just want to thank all of you for this great information because we're trying to raise money right now, and I'm interested to talk to Donald and Michael about next steps to pitch because we've been looking at angel investors in early stage investors right now. We're pitching them, but we need about $1.5 million. So it sounds like it's in the same range. So what would I do? Just contact you guys and try to split the meetings with you, or would it be with your colleagues? Does it depend on the sector that it's in? You know.
Is it raise debt or equity or equity?
And/or.
It's looking for $1.5 million, no matter how it comes.
Right, exactly.
Certainly, as we were saying earlier, contact information, contact me directly, and you've got a colleague in the back of the room, Fernando Canoa, so you might want to talk to Fernando. One of the things that we like to do is there are, again, take advantage of what's free out there, raise your hand, small business. We've got lots of programs that we participate in from Citibank's perspective. New York City has something called Small Business Services, solution centers all over, that's what they're called, that's the brand of the moment. Small business development centers, which are funded by the SBA through university and college campuses. There are about 11 of them in New York City. Pace, Baruch, Columbia, New York Tech, out in Brooklyn, easy to get to. They're free, absolutely free. So if you grab Fernando, who's in the back, part of our team here at Citi, he works with the director as an example of our Brooklyn Center. Her name is Catalina Castanio, Ira Davidson, who runs the Pace site at Pace University. Again, colleagues and folks that Fernando works with every day, so please, or contact me directly, I'm happy to.
Okay, thank you.
If I can ask a question out to you guys, just a challenge for the night. I imagine, again, in very broad terms, that there's technology that is something you can hold, and there's technology that's something you think about, it's on your computer or some other digital way. Those of you who are software oriented in that very broad definition, just raise your hand for a second. Everybody look around. And I'm assuming the rest of you, nod your head, you're the hardware people. Make sure you find somebody who's a counterpart, not a competitor. You're talking to other alumni, other members of the council here, so you're walking with some other contacts. We're all going to be here. You're going to get our contact information. But the challenge, again, is you build your business as you move forward. These are not your competitors. These are people you can talk to. Talk to you about your ideas. Someone who's going to vet your plan. Talk about how do I raise $1.5 million. Maybe some of the startups in the room. Talk to some of the folks who've successfully done it. And one of the things that I would certainly want to celebrate in this room is you do take a good look around. Seriously, is the diversity of the folks in this room. It's incredible. It looks like a Benetton ad from our perspective. So kudos to you guys.
Yeah. One thing I forgot to mention too, if I may, is that the mayor has started what's called the New York City Entrepreneurial Fund. If you go to nyc.gov, you can find out more about it. It's a $22 million fund for angel and seed capital. It's done in partnership with First Mark Capital, who's contributed, I think, $19 million out of that pool. It's the first fund of its kind outside of Silicon Valley, according to the mayor's office, and they are actively seeking applicants. The criteria for being considered are fairly generous. If you're based in New York City, and if your principals and your base of activity is here in New York City, because it's a New York City fund, and you don't have any bad record, because they do what they call a Vendex check, which is to make sure you're not connected with bad activities, then you're in. You're in for consideration. Now, of course, you're going to have to do all the things that these gentlemen spoke about, which is to have a wonderful, viable business plan, know your numbers, know that you have a great team that can execute on your numbers and your model. But that's a really cool thing to check out, and I know they're eager for applications, and that's free money.
Also, to add one more thing, for those looking for that round of angel funding, I sit on the board of an angel group in New Jersey called Jumpstart New Jersey, which is the second largest angel group between DC and New York, and it's a group of about 35 high net worth individuals who invested about $30 million into probably 50 or 60 companies over the last 6 years. So anyone looking for that $1 million or $2 million number, please see me afterwards.
Does it have to be in New Jersey?
No.
Okay. All right, I guess the last question. My name is Nicholas Cordova, and I started my technology company 12 years ago. And we have offices in Florida, here in New York, and we also just opened a new office in St. Louis, Missouri. with server farms and stuff. I just want to say thank you. When I first started my company, you guys didn't exist, or it was having you there. Giving this information is so valuable to people like me and everyone in this room. But I just also want to say thank you to Dawn with NITEC, having our technology event. I joined NITEC 2 years ago. And Fernando, if anyone wants to get a line of credit, I recommend Fernando with Citibank. They gave us a line of credit because as a technology company, I noticed with banking, and as you grow, you need more money. And like we got started, and I landed a $1.5 million contract with the government down in Florida when we got started. And so we bootstrapped it. And then we landed another $1 million client, another $1 million client, a $250,000 client, and we start growing. But as we get going, as you start out, it's difficult. But these resources are awesome. I just want to say thank you very much.
With that, I know Alan needs to get the tip off, and we're all desperate to get down to the bar and hear about how you start a restaurant on a boat.
Across the street, good spot.
I just want to thank the panelists. You guys did a great job, and just one more round of applause for